And so Chud took the borough and I took the school district in the 50s. And I was a school solicitor for the East Stroudsburg for 32 years, I think it was. Simultaneously, then Pocono Mountain was being forced into the mergers with Tobyhanna, Barrett, Coolbaugh, Tunkhannock, Pocono, and Paradise Township. Six townships, and almost 4 or 5 were separate school districts. Maybe 6 of them were. I can't remember exactly. So they were forming a jointure, and they chose me. A man named Harry Drennan was chairman of the committee that to form this jointure, and we had some litigation with the State Department of Education in which the West End school districts, the East Stroudsburg School District, and the Pocono districts were all fighting this. So we had no conflict. We were all in the same boat. We went out to Harrisburg, argued cases before the Superior Court, and lost because they required you to merge, and the legislature has that power. They can abolish school districts if they want, and under the Constitution that was okay. And so I worked both school districts, and I had to do a lot of night meetings. One time, it was 17 years with Pocono and 32, most of it overlapping with East Stroudsburg. I counted up. In the meantime, I got help, and from associate lawyers, young lawyers, came into our office, and Tom Dervanis and Charlie Iyer took some meetings. Judge Iyer, district judge, and they helped out some, and I substituted when Chud was busy to the borough council also, and I liked that school work. And as a matter of fact, I was the founder, one of the founders. The other guy was the solicitor from the Pennsylvania School Board Association, and 1 or 2 other school solicitors. We go to meetings to learn more about school law and statewide to help each other with the same common problems that we're having. And I formed a school solicitors association. I was their first president, and then in the local bars. And after I counted up one time roughly 1,725 approximate school board meetings, almost all of them at night. That was enough. That I didn't want to go to any more school board meetings. Well, I became county solicitor for 4 or 5 years, and I enjoyed that. That was a new experience, and worked with Jesse Pearson and Nancy Shikaitis and Stuart Pfeiffer and Jack Parker. Those were kind of some of the county commissioners whom I worked for. Janet Weidensaw was the chief clerk, and she and I worked well together, and I got some sort of award from them. And then the other thing that was in the law that I kept on doing, of course, was real estate and estates. And I finally, with Kirby Upright, we formed the Monroe County Bar Estate Lawyers section, we call it. It's like a committee, and it's a loose committee. We meet once a month on the first Wednesdays, and for lunch at the Best Western, and we have discussions about estate laws and estate law procedures and estate planning and the whole thing, that whole subject of trust and taxes and the related subjects, living wills and powers of attorney, estate administration. And we work with trust officers. Sometimes there's one trust. There's some trust officers that come to our meetings, so that's been interesting, and I'm enjoying that experience. And then I'm on the Monroe County Bar Foundation Board of Trustees. We have a separate foundation now, as being a strictly charitable arm, tax exempt, Section 501c3 tax exemption we have for the foundation, so that people can make contribution. The mission of the foundation is to reach out to young people, to tell them about the law and our justice system in the United States, and to teach them respect for the law and the procedures, and the agencies that create the laws have a better understanding, and to help especially disadvantaged children in that regard, that all young people as well as adults have a responsibility in society to obey the law, and otherwise they'll suffer the consequences for not obeying. That there are bad consequences, and if we have to obey the laws because of otherwise we'll have chaos, and if there isn't any system of justice that protects people's rights as well as enforces the obligations on people, that if you don't pay your mortgage, you're going to lose your home. If you don't pay the car payments, you lose your car, and things like that, the civil side as well as the criminal side of the law. So that's what we're trying to reach out for in the foundation. And so the other things I've done is some trials. I do very little trial work because I try to keep my clients out of court, and it's called preventative law. It's just like a preventative defensive driving of automobiles. If you do it carefully, if you're in business carefully, or you recognize people's rights of way in the road, and the same with the in family relations, that you have less problems, and there's less unhappiness, I think, in the community and in home life. So I've written some articles. I used to edit a thing called the Bench and Bar column in the Pocono Record for a number of years. I persuaded lawyers to write columns on their special knowledge in areas of practice, areas of the law, whether it be family law, divorces, or whether it be bankruptcy, or whether it be real estate or estates. They're all subjects that, and I put it in layman's language to make it more understandable. Mm-hmm. And they'd write articles, and I'd edit them, and I'd go to the judge. We only had one judge then. We only had one judge when I first began practicing law, and that was Judge Davis, Fred W. Davis, and he was succeeded by Arlington Williams. He was a terrific judge, and then Judge Marsh, who was the sole judge, and all that time, those judges. We had the old courthouse. We didn't have the new addition, and those judges also had to be the judge for all of Pike County, because it was one judicial district. It was called the 43rd Judicial District, and although we had separate district attorneys and separate juries, trials, and so on and so forth, separate recorder of deeds, separate register of wills, but there was one judge, and he'd go up there, and we also used to have a system where they had associate judges who were laypersons not trained in the law, who actually didn't really do much, so that eventually they were abolished, because it was a nominal political appointment usually, and once in a while the judge would ask them. They sat on each side of him and asked them, what they thought of that witness or something like that. But they had no authority. They didn't write opinions. they couldn't vote on a verdict or anything like that. They were just advisory, if that. So they were abolished, those associate judges. But now Pike has its own judicial district and its own full-time judge. Then we lobbied with the state of Pennsylvania, the county commissioners did especially, because the single judge was being overwhelmed. We started the growth spurt in the Poconos, and while Arlington Williams was the judge, and we gathered statistics and gave them to the legislatures, and they saw that they had to provide for more judges for Monroe County, and we pushed it up to 2 judges, and then it's 3 and 4 and 5. Now it's 6 judges we have. So it shows you how much, and they're still busy as can be, and space has been a big problem. They planned, and I was county solicitor at the time, the new courthouse addition, and we even got all approvals and bids and stuff on the plan, but we knew that we were in a growth situation, or the commissioners did. This is their judgment, not the solicitors. But so they built a whole empty 3rd floor on that courthouse, on that new addition, and it was empty at the time. It wasn't finished. They didn't finish the work inside because they didn't know exactly what they would need to have, but they thought that while you're building the basic structure, you build to expand into it. Well, of course, they've expanded into it, and it's way out of, it's not adequate now, and they're going to have to build more because the county keeps growing. I just can't believe how fast the population is growing, and litigation grows even faster for what all the social ills that we seem to be having often get involved in the courts as well, as you can tell from the number. We used to have maybe 5 or 10 criminal cases in a term of court, and now it's up to 200 criminal charges come to court. That's the ones that already passed through and weeded out minors from the 8 district justices. This is appeals, serious criminal charges that come to the court, not like traffic tickets, but and then the district justices have grown just as fast, and their number of their cases statistics are just mind-boggling. I mean, there's no end to it. It just keeps on going. They have, I don't know how many district attorneys now, and public defenders, and all these changes that have taken place. Everything's gone into computers, which is great, and they've made great strides and efficiencies in the courthouse, and they're still behind in their work. And
did you ever think about being a judge?
I was asked a couple of times, and I thought about it, but too many other things I was more interested in than being a judge. Mm-hmm. I didn't care for courtroom work. I'd be able to stay out of it. We had trials, and sure, we go to court, and even recently, even with estates, we have to go to court sometimes. We had beneficiaries of the estate blocking the executor from getting onto the property and things like that, and you have to get a court order. In one case, the beneficiary was 5 little kids, and the parent of these kids was obstructing. All the money was going to go to these in a trust fund for these kids, and the parent was obstructing the executor from getting into it and doing the appraisals and cleaning out this property, which took about $10,000 to clean up the inside of it, and you have to go to court to get court orders that they would either obey or they'd be in contempt of court and go to jail.
You know, it's hard to believe that we already talked for an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Are you starting to feel tired at all?
No, I'm fine. But then let's see, what else did I do in the law? But a variety of things. But I enjoyed the legal career very much. And
were there any cases that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, the one was I think this is the best one. Philip Williams was a friend of mine and moved here from the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area with his family, and he had been a district attorney up there, or he worked for the United States Attorney. He was a U.S. attorney, federal, that is not the county. And we brought him into our office as an associate, which is an employed attorney. And one of my brother's closest friends ever, named Joseph Small, grew up across the street in South Green Street from us. Grew up with us, playing all kinds of games, going through school, sports, varsities, East Stroudsburg, and his father had an insurance business, and he joined that, and he got interested in Republican politics, and he was going to run for mayor against a very well-established mayor named Hal Harris. And Hal was very much a character, but very dynamic and opinionated and strong-willed. Hal was known for a lot of things, and one of them was he was in charge of the police department, of course, the mayor was, and he got into an altercation with the assistant chief of police, whose name escapes me for the moment, and of Stroudsburg. And the police actually directed traffic in those days. There was one traffic light later at 7th and Main. That was the first traffic light, and for a long time that was the only traffic light. But when we got traffic at someplace else, and anyway, Hal had been very good, and he'd gotten he's claimed to have been instrumental from a Democratic president and Congress, the brand new post office at the time that we now have on Ann Street, which was brand new at that time. Mm-hmm. And he also got some major improvements in of an entire sewage disposal system for Stroudsburg. And he had an altercation with Charlie Allen, was the name of the guy, the police officer, and he was trying to push Charlie Allen out of the way. As a matter of fact, he struck him, I think, with his fist, and Allen then took him to jail, and he was his boss. And this was witnessed by a whole bunch of people. I mean, there just wasn't any question about what happened. I forget how that case came out, but Joe Small, he became so controversial that somebody else is going to run against him, even though he was great at getting federal money for Stroudsburg. And Joe Small was decided his first thing in politics, he was going to run against him. And so all Joe's pals, of course, and the other Republicans joined together and ran a campaign. And we found out during the campaign, and I worked on it a little bit for Joe, and that Hal, who at the time, and this was lawful, conducted traffic court for illegal parking and things like that. The mayor could hold a individual court, just like a justice of the peace did, but he's limited jurisdiction. But he collect traffic fines if they're parking next to a fire plug or anything like that. And he levied fines against people, and that was part of the judicial system. Well, he didn't turn the money over to the borough, which he was supposed to do. So George Robinson, acquaintance of mine, a very good lawyer, was the borough solicitor and had been for years, and very knowledgeable. Well, he finally got a judgment, a civil judgment, against Hal for the amount of fines that he hadn't turned over. And this was right before the campaign. And it recorded in the courthouse, in the Prothonotari's office, open to the public. And so we took out a newspaper ad, put the ad in the paper that Hal Harris has a judgment, just what the facts are. I think just exactly what the judgment stated. And it was clear that black and white. And, he got furious. Well, he lost the election. I don't know whether it was because of that, but I'm sure that had some impact because he's stolen money that belonged to the borough, in effect. And he could have been criminally charged for that. It's just like any judge or person who collects something on behalf of municipality, whether it be tax collector or whoever, they go to jail very often if they don't turn the money over, and they should go to jail. I mean, there just isn't any reason to hold the money. He didn't have any defenses to that. He would not have had a judgment lodged against him. He didn't appeal the judgment or anything like that. Anyway, so he was so angry after the election, and he was beaten soundly, that he sued Joe Small for slander and libel we call it, written. This is a written alleged defamation of his character, and that's why he lost the election. Well, it went to a jury trial before Judge Fred Davis, and there was a jury impaneled, and Philip and I were defending Joe Small. It's on the basis of truth. You can publish truth about anybody, even if it is terribly embarrassing, and even if he could have gone to jail, but didn't, because nobody charged him with a criminal offense. But it was a fact there on the courthouse records, and that's what we published. And he didn't deny that he owed the money. He just said we defamed him. And his lawyer was Kenneth Lewis, a good friend of mine, a good lawyer, well respected. Well, at the closing argument Kenneth Lewis made, after all the evidence was put in before the jury and the judge, and each lawyer gets to give a closing argument, and he, summarizing the evidence and the legal positions, and of course the judge charges the jury as well. And Kennard was saying at the end of his speech, he's saying, well, whenever we want jurors to consider all these great things that Hal did with this new sewage system and the new post office and all these things that he's done, and whenever you flush your toilet, you should think of Hal Harris. And of course, everybody just burst out laughing. And the whole courtroom erupted. The judge almost fell out of his chair. He laughed so hard. That was the end of that case. Joe was held harmless. There was no verdict against him for defamation. But that was, to me, that was the high point of our career on the flushing of toilets. Well, as a matter of fact, he illustrated, because a lot of the old toilets, they had the tank hanging up on the wall, and you'd pull a chain. And Kenneth was saying, when you pull a chain to flush your toilet, he says, think of my client. So that was the end of that case. That's my favorite story, legal story. But we had some good cases.